Alright, what's up guys? Today I wanted to make a video about something that I've been fascinated with the last couple weeks and been doing a lot of research about, and that is the hardest places to travel to as an American. So politics aside, this is all my own opinion and my own researching, and I'm not saying you should travel to any of these places or should attempt to travel to any of these places, but just to keep an open mind when thinking about where you should travel and maybe travel to places that people don't really consider as travel destinations or tourist destinations. So if we just jump right into this list here, the first one is the country of Turkmenistan, which is located in Central Asia. For this one, not too many requirements, but you do need a visa. With the visa, you need a letter of invitation, which you can get from a tour agency or the Ministry of Tourism. We do have an embassy for Turkmenistan in the United States, which makes things a little easier as well. You would probably have to fly through Dubai, Frankfurt, or Istanbul to get to the capital city of Ashgabat. And speaking of Ashgabat, it's a pretty interesting looking city. It's basically made of all white marble, and it's considered to be one of the world's most repressive and closed off countries. Also in this country they have the door to hell, which you may have seen pictures of before. It's like this crater in the ground with flames and lava coming out. It looks pretty cool. Look up a picture of it if you've never seen it. It's pretty interesting, but that's located in Turkmenistan as well. So the next country we have on this list is the country of Nauru. So Nauru is located, it's a little small island in the South Pacific, and honestly it's a pretty sad story. It used to be very, very wealthy, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and it was basically overmined and overdeveloped. It had a lot of phosphate there, so they mined the phosphate, and it went from being one of the wealthiest countries in the world to being now one of the poorest countries in the world. It's also the most obese country in the world. And apparently it's the second smallest sovereign state in the world after the Vatican City, which interestingly enough, I would say the Vatican City is probably one of the easiest countries or states to enter. I was there in December, and you literally just walk across the border, and no, your passport isn't stamped or anything, you just walk right in, so that's kind of interesting. It's also one of the least visited countries in the world. I read somewhere that like only 700 people visit Nauru a year. So from the US, it's also very logistically challenging to get to. You'd have to fly through Fiji or Australia to get there, which obviously is a long way from the United States in the first place. So for Nauru, the visa requirement is pretty stringent as well. You're going to need a passport, you're going to need a photo of yourself, you're going to need your hotel information or sponsorship from a resident of Nauru. You also need a criminal record certificate, a physical fitness certificate, which I'm guessing is just like a health certificate from a doctor, and also a certificate of employment. So this is definitely a pretty challenging place to get to, and honestly I had never even heard of Nauru before. I've heard of Tuvalu, which I thought was the smallest, least visited country in the world, but apparently it's Nauru, or Nauru is up there on the list. So to end Nauru on a positive note, because there's a lot of sad and bad things about Nauru, it is relatively safe to travel to. It's one of the countries on this list that is not on the level 4 do not travel advisory from the State Department. And another positive note is that they have won a lot of medals in weightlifting at the Commonwealth Games, so pretty interesting. So next on this list we have a country that I probably would travel to in the near future, someday hopefully. That country is Venezuela. So Venezuela, the embassy in the US is closed, or it's closed for at least for visa services. There's an embassy in Ottawa, Canada, and also Mexico City. I've heard the one in Mexico City is most frequently used to get tourist visas for Americans. You may have to make multiple trips, so it could be very logistically challenging and costly as well. You do need a passport, you need a photo of yourself again, your flight information. Once again, you do need a medical certificate or like a doctor's note. You have to have a physical, I guess, before you go to Venezuela. You need a bank statement, basically saying you have enough money to support your trip. And you need an employer's note as well. This whole process can take up to 3 months, I've heard. And also there's no direct flights right now to Venezuela from the United States. You would have to connect through probably Mexico City or Panama City or Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. But this country looks beautiful, and I've heard good things about it. Just the situation there right now is obviously not great. Hopefully improving slowly. So the next country, a little ironic because I put it on my list of top places to visit in 2023, which I'll also link that video in the description, but this is the country of Angola in Southwest Africa. So Angola, visa process, I've read conflicting information about it. You do need a visa, so you need your passport, you need a picture, you need a hotel, which I've read has to be non-refundable. I've also read that you need an invitation letter in Portuguese and notarized in Angola, which could be pretty challenging. You also need a certificate of livelihood, which is, I'm guessing, is just like a health certificate, like a physical, again, from a doctor's note pretty much. Also, there are no direct flights to Angola from the United States, so you most likely have to connect through Europe. Portugal, I know there's a lot of flights from Portugal, or also somewhere else in Africa as well. The last country on the list is somewhere that I would not go at this time, and I wouldn't recommend going, is Libya. So Libya, I've read conflicting information about this one as well. I've read that there are no tourist visas at all for Americans. So I've read that some Americans that want to go there or have been there have had to get business visas. So they've had to travel to Europe, to an embassy in Rome, for example, and spend a couple weeks in Rome waiting for the visa. And I've even read stories about people coming up with fake businesses. Seems really risky to me, because if you get caught, the penalties for faking something in one of these countries on an official document, I'm sure is very high, and definitely not a place you want to end up in trouble. For this one, you also need a money order, an invitation, which I think you can get from some tour agencies that operate there. And apparently for Libya, there's really no rhyme or reason for who they give the visa to. It's just kind of at random, which could also be very challenging. So another thing for Libya is you cannot have been to Israel before you go to Libya. They won't let you in the country. So a lot of people say they had to have 2 passports or just not get their passports stamped when they went to Israel. So I do have a list of honorable mentions for the most challenging places for Americans to visit in the world, and that is going to be Chad, Somalia, Equatorial Guinea, Saudi Arabia, Eritrea, Russia, and then of course North Korea. I didn't even put North Korea on the list because it is impossible to go there right now. Americans are banned from traveling to North Korea, so I didn't even put it on the list. Another one that could have been on the list, that was on a lot of lists online, is Cuba, but if you watch my video on Cuba, which I'll link in the description, my first video, it is really not that hard actually to travel to Cuba as an American. If you just put in some legwork, you can do it totally legally. And yeah, it's a quick 45-minute flight from Miami, so it's very close and logistically not that challenging to travel to Cuba. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, I'm not encouraging you to travel to any of these places or attempt to travel to any of these places, but what I am saying is, seek uncomfortable things, open your mind, and maybe considering traveling to places that not everyone considers as a tourist destination, and you may be pleasantly surprised.